Commander Visla Takara had never seen a human up close before today. Now she wished she never had. By the 6 moons of Kareth, what have I done? Visla hissed through her mandibles, staring at the crimson liquid dripping down her ceremonial blade. The human's blood was unlike anything she'd encountered in her 300 cycles of battle. It shimmered with an unnatural iridescence, almost pulsing with life even though it was no longer inside its host. The battlefield around her had gone silent. The war between the Vrexian Dominion and the human colonists of New Terra had been raging for months, but this particular skirmish had just taken an unexpected turn. Visla had personally led the charge against the humans' defensive line, slashing through their ranks with practiced precision until she'd come face to face with their commander. He was tall for a human, with striking blue eyes that reminded her of the toxic lakes on her homeworld. When their weapons had clashed, she'd managed to slash across his face, expecting him to fall like the others. But instead of dropping dead, he'd smiled, an actual smile. With those weird, flat teeth humans had, and then his blood had splattered across her blade. Now the entire battlefield was frozen in a tableau of shock and confusion. Her fellow Vrexians had backed away, mandibles clicking in alarm. The humans had lowered their weapons, some even laughing, in the middle of battle. What's happening? Why is everyone acting so strange? Visla demanded of her second-in-command, Drex Nabarus. Drex's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of extreme distress among her species. Commander, you've been claimed. Claimed? What nonsense are you spouting, Lieutenant? We don't get claimed in battle. We claim victory or we claim defeat. There is no other option. Actually, a deep voice interrupted. There is a third option when it comes to humans. Visla whirled around to face the human commander she'd just wounded. The gash across his face was already clotting, but the blood on her blade continued to shimmer and pulse. Up close, she could see that his eyes weren't just blue. They contained flecks of silver that seemed to dance like stars in a night sky. Commander Jackson Wraith. He introduced himself with a slight bow that made Visla's exoskeleton crawl with discomfort. And you are? Commander Visla Takara of the 7th Fleet, Vrexian Dominion, she replied automatically, years of military protocol overriding her confusion. What is this claiming my lieutenant speaks of? Jackson Wraith ran a finger along the wound on his cheek, examining the blood. You Vrexians really should have done more research before attacking us. Humans have a peculiar biological quirk that your species evidently wasn't aware of. When our blood makes contact with certain alien metals under specific conditions of stress and adrenaline, like say during battle, it creates a biochemical bond. BD-sant. Visla's upper mandibles clicked together in annoyance. Speak plainly, human. Your ceremonial blade, he pointed at the weapon still clutched in her claw, is made of terethium alloy, isn't it? Mined from the asteroid belts in the Cygnus system. Visla didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. Jackson smiled again, and this time she noticed a scar running through his left eyebrow. Terethium reacts with human blood at a molecular level. The reaction releases compounds that bind to the nervous system of whoever holds the weapon. In ancient times, we called it a blood oath. These days, we have a more scientific term for it. Involuntary symbiotic servitude. That's ridiculous. Visla snarled, raising her blade. I serve no one but the Vrexian High Command. Try to attack me. Jackson suggested calmly, spreading his arms wide. Go ahead. Try. Visla lunged forward. Her blade aimed straight at the human's heart, but halfway through the motion, her arm seized up. Pain shot through her exoskeleton like liquid fire, and she dropped to her knees, mandibles wide in a silent scream. See? Jackson crouched down beside her, seemingly unconcerned about the army of Vrexians watching from a distance. The bond works both ways. You can't harm me, and in return, I can't harm you. But there's a catch. You're bound to serve me for exactly 1 Terran year. After that, the biochemical bond dissolves, and you're free to go back to trying to kill me if you'd like. This is absurd. Visla spat, struggling back to her feet. Some kind of human trickery. Not trickery. Jackson shook his head. Evolution. We developed this trait during our early days on Earth, when we were constantly at war with each other. It was a way to turn enemies into allies, if only temporarily. When we started exploring space, we discovered it works on certain alien species too. Lucky you. A loud, barking laugh erupted from behind Jackson as another human stepped forward. This one was shorter, with skin several shades darker and hair cropped close to the scalp. "Commander," the newcomer addressed Jackson, "should I inform Central Command that we've acquired another one?" Jackson nodded. "Tell them Commander Visla Takara of the 7th Fleet will be joining our diplomatic corps for the next year." "Diplomatic corps?" Visla hissed. "I'm a warrior, not a diplomat." "And that," Jackson said with a wink that made Visla's blood boil, "is precisely why you'll make such an interesting addition to our team. Lieutenant Mateo, please escort the rest of the Vrexian forces back to their ships. Their commander will be coming with us." The shorter human, Mateo, grinned widely. "Yes, sir." "All right, folks," he called out to the Vrexian troops. "Show's over. Time to pack up and head home. Don't worry, we'll take good care of your commander. She's in good hands." Drex stepped forward hesitantly. "Commander Takara, what are your orders?" Visla felt trapped between rage and humiliation. The thought of abandoning her troops was unthinkable, but the pain that had shot through her when she tried to attack the human had been very real. Whatever this blood oath was, it seemed to have genuine power over her. "Return to High Command," she finally said, her voice tight with restraint. "Report what has happened here." "I will gather intelligence on the humans while under this supposed bond and find a way to break it. This is not surrender, Lieutenant. This is reconnaissance." Drex didn't look convinced, but she nodded anyway. "As you command, Commander Takara." As her troops began their retreat, Visla turned back to face Jackson Wraith. "You will regret this, human. When this bond breaks, I will personally ensure that your species understands the full wrath of the Vrexian Dominion." Jackson's expression softened unexpectedly. "You know, the last alien who said those exact words to me is now my chief security officer. She just got married last month to another former blood-bonded from the Andorian Empire." "I am nothing like your other captives," Visla snarled. "No," Jackson agreed, surprising her. "You're not. You're the first Vrexian to be bonded, which makes you uniquely valuable. Do you know how long our species have been trying to establish diplomatic relations with yours? Your High Command has refused every attempt at peaceful contact for the past 70 years. Because humans are known deceivers and conquerors." Visla shot back. "Your kind pretends to come in peace but always ends up dominating any world you touch." And yet, Jackson gestured around at the battlefield where his troops were now helping injured Vrexians. "Here we are, stopping a fight instead of finishing it. Curious behavior for conquerors, wouldn't you say?" Before Visla could respond, a massive shadow passed overhead. Looking up, she saw a human transport vessel descending toward them, much sleeker and more advanced than anything she'd expected from a species as young as humans. "That's our ride," Jackson said cheerfully. "Welcome to the next year of your life, Commander Takara. I promise it won't be what you expect." "Yeah, well." As Visla was escorted onto the human vessel, she cast one last look at her retreating forces. This was not how she had imagined this day would end. She had expected either glorious victory or honorable death. Instead, she was bound to serve a human with irritatingly blue eyes and an even more irritating tendency to smile. "I should have aimed for your throat," she muttered as the transport doors closed behind them. Jackson laughed, a sound that grated on every one of Visla's nerve endings. "Many have tried, Commander. Many have tried." The transport hummed to life, carrying them away from the battlefield and toward a future Visla could not begin to imagine. One thing was certain. This human would learn that capturing a Vrexian commander came with consequences, blood oath or not. What she didn't realize was that Jackson Wraith was about to teach her something far more dangerous than warfare. He was going to show her that everything she thought she knew about humans, and perhaps even about her own species, was entirely wrong. And somewhere deep in the universe, The 6 moons of Kareth continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the fate of one Vrexian commander whose life had just been irrevocably changed by a single slash of her blade. 3 weeks into her forced servitude, Visla Takara found herself in a situation more baffling than battle. She stood in a massive hall filled with representatives from 27 different species, wearing what humans called formal attire. A ridiculous outfit that pinched at her exoskeletal joints and made her feel like a molting juvenile. "Stop fidgeting," Jackson whispered from beside her. "The Regillian ambassador is looking for any excuse to declare humans culturally insensitive. Perhaps kidnapping a Vrexian commander and forcing her into this absurd costume qualifies," Visla hissed back, adjusting the ceremonial sash that hung across her thorax. Jackson had the audacity to grin. "You weren't kidnapped, you were blood-bonded. There's an entire section about it in the Galactic Accord of 2189. And that absurd costume is traditional Vrexian diplomatic wear. We had it specially made based on historical archives." Visla froze. "How did you access our historical archives?" "Those are sealed to outsiders. Ask your questions later. Ambassador Zorax is approaching, and he's notoriously sensitive about being kept waiting." Before Visla could protest, she found herself face to face with what appeared to be a floating mass of tentacles surrounding a central eye. The Regillian ambassador pulsed several shades of purple as he addressed them. "Commander Wraith." The translator implanted in Visla's auditory canal rendered the ambassador's vibrations into words. "We are most intrigued by your Vrexian companion. The Dominion has refused our diplomatic overtures for generations." Jackson bowed slightly. "Ambassador Zorax, may I present Commander Visla Takara of the 7th Fleet. She's been kind enough to join our diplomatic corps on a cultural exchange program." Visla nearly choked on her own mandibular secretions. "Cultural exchange program? Is that what humans were calling forced servitude these days, Commander Takara?" The ambassador's tentacles rippled in what the translator identified as a gesture of respect. "Your people's resistance to galactic integration has been most perplexing. Perhaps you might enlighten us as to why the Vrexian High Command views diplomatic relations as beneath their dignity." All eyes in the vicinity turned toward Visla. She could feel Jackson tensing beside her, probably expecting her to say something inflammatory. The temptation to do exactly that was strong, but strangely, another impulse rose within her: curiosity. "With respect, Ambassador," Visla began carefully, "my people believe that isolation preserves cultural purity. Our history teaches that contact with other species inevitably leads to dilution of our traditions and way of life. And yet," the ambassador's central eye blinked slowly, "here you stand, in a hall filled with beings from across the galaxy, wearing traditional Vrexian diplomatic attire that has not been seen outside your homeworld in centuries. Do you feel your cultural purity has been compromised?" Visla opened her mandibles to deliver a cutting retort, then closed them again. The ambassador had asked a fair question. Did she feel compromised? Corrupted? Changed? "I have not been among aliens long enough to determine that," she finally replied. "Ask me again in 11 months and 29 days. Ambassador Zorax pulsed with what the translator called appreciation of humor, a concept Visla hadn't intended to invoke. "I shall do exactly that, Commander Takara. Most refreshing to meet a Vrexian with both backbone and flexibility." After the ambassador floated away, Jackson turned to her with raised eyebrows. "That was diplomatic of you. Don't look so surprised, human. I've had extensive training in enemy psychological assessment. I merely said what would end the conversation quickest." Of course, Jackson nodded, but the infuriating smile remained. "And your comment about 11 months and 29 days? A factual statement of when this blood oath nonsense expires and I can return to my duties," Visla snapped. "Now explain how you accessed our historical archives." Jackson took a sip from his glass. "We didn't. That outfit was designed by Prex Morvan." "Who is Prex Morvan?" "A Vrexian expatriate. Lives on Saturn's moon Titan now, makes a living designing authentic cultural wear for diplomatic functions. There are quite a few Vrexians living among humans, Commander. They just don't advertise it to the Dominion for obvious reasons." Visla felt as though the floor beneath her had suddenly vanished. Impossible. No true Vrexian would abandon the Dominion. No true Vrexian? Jackson echoed. Interesting phrase. Tell me, in your 300 cycles, have you ever met a Vrexian who questioned the High Command's policies, who wondered about the worlds beyond your borders, who thought perhaps there might be more to existence than military glory and cultural isolation? Visla's mandibles clicked together in agitation. Of course she had. Every squadron had its dreamers and dissenters. Most grew out of such foolishness. Those who didn't usually disappeared on special assignments. Your silence is answer enough, Jackson said quietly. Come on. There's someone you should meet. He led her through the crowded hall to a quieter alcove where a Vrexian female stood conversing with a group of what Visla recognized as Arcturian philosophers. Unlike Visla, this female wore her exoskeleton unadorned except for a simple pendant that caught the light. Commander Takara, meet Professor Kira Nex, Chair of Xenoanthropology at Oxford University on Earth. The female Vrexian turned, her 4 eyes widening in surprise. By the moons, an actual Dominion officer, Commander Wraith. You didn't tell me your newest blood bonded was military. Former 7th Fleet Commander, Jackson supplied helpfully. Professor Nex's mandibles parted in what Visla recognized as the Vrexian equivalent of astonishment. 7th Fleet? You were at the Battle of Proxima Centauri then? Visla straightened instinctively. I led the 3rd wave against the human defenses. We suffered minimal casualties while inflicting significant damage to their orbital platforms. Fascinating perspective. Nex clicked her mandibles in the pattern that indicated academic interest. The human historical record indicates that the 7th Fleet retreated after miscalculating the defensive capabilities of the civilian research stations. They apparently believed they were attacking military installations. That's absurd. Visla bristled. Our intelligence clearly identified military targets. Actually, Jackson interjected, they were terraforming research stations. Civilian. 142 scientists died that day. Human propaganda, Visla dismissed. Though uncertainty crept into her voice, the High Command would never target non-combatants. Professor Nex exchanged a look with Jackson that made Visla's antennae twitch with irritation. Commander Takara, Nex said gently, I left the Dominion 90 years ago because I discovered disturbing discrepancies between our military intelligence reports and actual events. The High Command has been systematically misinforming our people about the nature of other species, particularly humans. That's treasonous talk, Visla growled, but her usual conviction was wavering. Yes, according to Dominion law, Nex agreed, which is why I sought asylum on Earth, where, incidentally, I've been allowed to freely study, teach, publish critiques of human society, and even maintain my Vrexian customs. When was the last time you heard of any species being granted such freedoms within the Dominion? Before Visla could answer, a commotion erupted across the hall. Security personnel were rushing toward the main entrance, and the crowd parted to reveal a group of Vrexians in military uniform. Stay here, Jackson ordered, his hand instinctively moving to the weapon at his hip. Those are Dominion Special Forces, Visla said, recognizing the distinctive armor. Elite infiltration unit. Friends of yours? Jackson asked. Not exactly. They answered directly to the High Command, not fleet officers. Perfect timing, Jackson muttered. The one night we convinced the Galactic Council to meet without their usual security detail. Professor Nex moved closer to Visla. Commander, those troops aren't here for a diplomatic mission. Obviously, Visla replied. They're here to extract me. No, Nex shook her head. They're here to eliminate you. A Vrexian commander in prolonged contact with humans, learning our truths. You're now classified as a security risk. Visla wanted to deny it. But deep down, she knew Nex was right. The Dominion standard protocol for compromised officers was elimination, not extraction. Her life expectancy had just shortened dramatically. I need to get to the command center, Jackson said, watching as the Special Forces began methodically scanning the crowd. Professor, can you get Commander Takara to the secure bunker? Nex nodded. Follow me, Commander. But Visla stood her ground. Wait, your security forces are outmatched. Vrexian special forces use neural disruptors that will incapacitate your guards before they can even draw their weapons. Jackson raised an eyebrow. Are you offering tactical advice, Commander, to help humans against your own people? Visla's inner conflict must have shown on her face, because Jackson's expression softened. The blood oath doesn't compel you to fight against your own species, he said. It only prevents you from harming me personally. Visla knew he was right. She could stand by and watch as the special forces decimated this gathering. Nothing in the blood oath would stop her. It would be the honorable thing to do, according to everything she'd been taught. And yet, the neural disruptors have a frequency vulnerability, she found herself saying. They operate on a modulated pulse that can be countered with a specific electromagnetic pattern. Jackson's eyes widened. You're sure about this? I've commanded troops against your forces for decades, human. I know every weakness in Vrexian tactical equipment, just as I know every weakness in yours. A slow smile spread across Jackson's face. Then I believe it's time for your first official duty as a member of the Human Diplomatic Corps. Commander Takara, what followed was not what Visla had imagined when she'd woken up that morning. Instead of standing stiffly at a diplomatic function, she found herself in the command center of the Galactic Council headquarters and directing human security forces on how to counter Vrexian attack strategies. With her insights, they managed to neutralize the special forces without a single casualty on either side. When it was over, and the Vrexian infiltrators were secured, Jackson found her staring out at the Earth through a massive viewport. That was impressive work, Commander, he said, coming to stand beside her. You saved a lot of lives today. Both human and Vrexian. I betrayed my people. Visla said flatly. Did you? Or did you prevent a massacre that would have plunged our species into an even more devastating war? Visla had no answer for that. The High Command sent those troops to kill you, Jackson continued. They were willing to sacrifice one of their most decorated commanders rather than risk you learning the truth about humans. And what truth is that? Visla asked quietly. That we're not the monsters your leaders have made us out to be. That coexistence is possible. That there's room in this galaxy for both our species to thrive, side by side rather than at each other's throats. Visla turned to look at him directly. And this blood oath business? Is that your idea of peaceful coexistence? Jackson had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. An imperfect solution to an impossible problem. How do you get someone to listen when they're determined to kill you? The blood oath gives us time to show the truth, time to build understanding. And if after a year, I still choose to return to the Dominion, then you go, with no interference from us. Though I suspect you might find the choice more difficult than you currently imagine. Visla looked back at the Earth, so blue and vibrant compared to the regulated environments of Vrexian worlds. We'll see, human. 11 months and 28 days to go. Jackson laughed. I'm looking forward to every one of them, Commander Takara. He turned to leave, then paused. By the way, as of today, you have diplomatic immunity across all Galactic Council territories. The Special Forces can't touch you now, even if the Blood Oath weren't in effect, so I'm free to go. Visla asked, surprised. You've always been free to go, Jackson replied. The Blood Oath prevents you from harming me, not from leaving. But where would you go? The Dominion just tried to kill you. And besides, he grinned that infuriating grin again. I think you're starting to find us fascinating. As he walked away, Visla turned back to the viewport. He wasn't entirely wrong. Despite herself, she was curious about humans, about the galaxy beyond Vrexian space, about all the things the High Command had declared forbidden knowledge. Perhaps 11 months and 28 days would be enough time to satisfy that curiosity. Perhaps not. Either way, Commander Visla Takara, formerly of the 7th Fleet, Vrexian Dominion, had a feeling her life had changed in ways that went far beyond a simple blood oath. And somewhere, in the back of her mind, a small voice wondered if that might not be such a terrible thing after all.